What's going on, everybody? Welcome to PFF at the Combine for day 4 here in Indianapolis. This is our final day that we're going to be on the desk, boys.
I'm excited.
Final day, so we got to unload the clip.
Desk. Give me just a little, like a table.
All right, the table.
Sweet,
all right,
dude.
call me out to start the show. It's fine.
These aren't even nice chairs.
Mike Renner, Austin Gayle, Trevor Sikkema here with you to talk about a lot of stuff, man. I mean, we are in the thick of it. We had quotes today from the defensive linemen. We got drills right now for the offensive tackles and the running backs. I mean, we've had all sorts of. We got to talk about what the wide receivers did last night. I mean, there's a ton of stuff to get to. How you guys feeling? Mike, I know that you
Well rested.
Well rested? Still?
Got 9 hours sleep last night.
No, I didn't. So don't ask.
What time did you go to bed last night?
I got back at like 4 and woke up way earlier than I should have. It's kind of where we're at right now. It's kind of where we're at.
We're grinding.
Yeah,
we're grinding. The boys are out here grinding.
We're
bringing you the best show that we've had all week today because we have so much to talk about. Offensive linemen, they're on the fields right now if you guys are watching NFL Network. So let's talk about the offensive linemen. Let's bring up our top 5 offensive tackles as we talk about what we are seeing on the field right now. You guys see that there. We've got Sikkema Ekwonu, Charles Cross, Evan Neal, Bernard Raymond, Tyler Linderbaum. Mike, I know you love Charles Cross. He recently just ran the 40, and I feel like it was a pretty damn good time for the young man. What do you think?
4.93, I believe, unofficially. And now, maybe based on yesterday, it's going to be like a 5.2 or something. But no, 4.93, it looked like he was moving. Like, he looked like he knew how to run. Some of those O-linemen go out there, and they look like they haven't sprinted before when they're doing it. He looked like an athlete playing the tackle position, and that's why he's OT1 on the PFF boards, because he, to me, is the most projectable athlete in terms of pass protection at the next level. Icky's a great run blocker. Evan Neal is this horse of a human being that is just built in a lab, but Charles Cross has the best movement skills to me, ran the fastest 40 there. Sikkema Ekwonu, though, no slouch himself, got under 5.
I thought Charles Cross, too, the measurables came up good for Cross. Like 34-plus inch arms, really big hands. I was impressed with how he came in because a lot of people are looking at Evan Neal, the svelte Evan Neal that you've talked about, 6'7", 337. Sikkema Ekwonu is this big monster that really hurts people in the run game. But I thought Cross's measurables were really impressive. He's already running a really well 40-yard dash. I think he has had a really good start to this process, right? We still need to see official times, broad jump, vertical, the 3-cone, and all of those things. Where we do feel Icky will show up is the vertical, is the broad. He also had a pretty good 10-yard split as well. I think both those tackles, obviously they made the decision to work out here in Indianapolis. Evan Neal didn't. I think they're having a good week to start.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. Evan Neal obviously not working out. He told us at the Combine that he was not going to be working out. Bernard Raymond, he is our 5th-ranked offensive tackle. I know you and I really love him, Mike, and he put up 30 reps on the bench. As a former tight end, I was not expecting that kind of strength from him, even though I like him.
I would say that's kind of why I'm buying into him. Why he's top 15 player on the PFF boards, because of the ascension he's made, because of how much stronger he is over 2 years in a collegiate weight room, going from tight end to tackle. Think of where he could be 2 years from now. Like I said, with those 30 reps on the bench, a very good number for an offensive lineman. 33-inch arms. Kind of borderline, but definitely above the threshold. You have a ton of guys around the league with 33-inch arms playing offensive tackle, so that's not really a concern for me. I can't wait to see this dude, what he broad jumps, what his 40 is, because on tape he is explosive, man.
I'm a huge fan of Bernard Raymond as well, and I think you speak to the ascension. This is a guy that is from Austria, did not pick up a football until he saw an egg-shaped ball on the streets of Vienna, looked at those, and then he's like, Dad, I think I want to play this sport, and he ends up playing high school football in the United States, and then goes to Central Michigan, and plays tight end to start, moves to offensive tackle. I know you've talked to Paul Alexander, an offensive line coach in the NFL that's working with Bernard Raymond. No one takes to coaching like Bernard Raymond. That shows up where? Putting 30 reps on the bench shows the improvement in the weight room, but what he's doing from a technique perspective to improve every single year, that's that ascension again. And so many players in the draft, you are drafting them what they can be, not what they are right now. And I think once you get to that point with Bernard Raymond, as he continues to improve, you can start to talk yourself into the player he can be in the NFL.
Fell in love with an egg-shaped ball. He gets sponsored by Manscaped.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Oh,
nice.
Wow. The ad read sells itself, boys. There's a free one for you, Manscaped. All right, so let's move on to running backs. Running backs are also working out today. They're going to be working out after the offensive tackle. So we're going to get the 40s, the broad, the vert, all that stuff from the running backs. Our top 5 running backs PFF right now, we've got Kenny Walker. I almost said Kenneth Walker, but I think he's going by Kenny now. I think we've got to go switch it up.
Got a nephew named Kenny. It's better.
Okay, I think he even went up to the bench, and when he grabbed the microphone, he said Ken Walker. Like he's just he's
going to be K by the time.
He's going to be K Walker.
Hey, man, but that's actually your brand, really.
KW3.
Just shortening everyone's names to the point where it's not even
He's going on my board.
recognizable anymore. So obviously we have him pretty high. We have Breece Hall pretty high. Damian Pierce, those guys. Mike, what do you think about this running back class overall and what you're going to see on the field later today?
I think those top 2 guys are getting slept on. I don't see why they are getting talked about in a light differently from what we saw last year's class, where you had 2 guys go in the first round and Javonte Williams go at the top of the second round. To me, they are as good of prospects. K-Walk, and Breece Hall. K-Dub 3. K-Dub and Breece Hall. Those guys are just as good a prospect we saw last year. They have all-around skill sets. To me, they're very complete running backs. Kenneth Walker, I keep saying Kenneth, I can't stop it. But K-Walk's
it's repetition at this point. We've said it so many times on radio shows and and everything, man. I mean,
sign language. Can't even say his name out loud.
His biggest sort of knock on him is pass protection. He is going to have to get better than that once he gets to the NFL. But with the ball in his hands, dude's dynamic as hell. He wasn't supposed to do what he did at Michigan State. No one's done what he did at Michigan State. Like, that was not supposed to happen. They were not supposed to beat Michigan or even be in that game. But they were because of K-Walk. So, to me, those 2 guys are, like I said, as good a prospects as we saw last year, and I think they're going to put on a show this week.
K-Dub's my favorite player in the draft right now. I was talking to Mike earlier today, though. He comes in, I think, 5'9", 211 pounds, and some people look at that and say, oh, it's too small to play a position. 5'9", 211, you are rocked up, dude. That guy, and it shows up, contact balance. He had the most forced missed tackles of any Power 5 running back this season, one of the highest graded running backs this year. Turn on the Michigan tape, right? Turn on the Michigan tape and see what he did against what was a objectively top defense in the Power 5. He really gets it done. And you speak of ascension. I mean, this guy at Wake Forest, he makes the transfer, and to go through all of that to actually move up. And I remember talking to Mel Tucker, who brought in a ton of transfers in the transfer portal era to bring this guy in. He said, I watched 2 plays. I said, I want Kenneth Walker, K-Dub on my team. And
Kenneth at the time.
Exactly, Kenneth at the time. And he is now developed into, obviously, one of the better prospects in this class.
No, he has. Another running back that a lot of people are falling in love with as this process goes on is Florida's Dameon Pierce. Okay,
I love Dameon Pierce.
We've talked to him at the Senior Bowl. We've talked to him at the Combine, everything, man. And he did something, again, that made him continue to be a fan favorite at the bench press today. You guys have to see this clip.
Oh, Dameon Pierce, Florida.
It's going to work, Bob. Just give me a 3 count. That's all I ask for. Let's go to work. Go. Lock out. All the way up. There you go. Yes. Okay. Come on. Let's go. Come on. All the way up. Lock it out. Come on. Let's go. Come on. Warning. Lock out. Fight now. Fight. I got you back. You good. Come on with it, Bo. Go get another one. Lock that out. I got 21 reps.
That's the quote of the Combine.
That's
the quote of the Combine. Don't touch that bitch. What an unbelievable line from Dameon Pierce. It was he walked up with so much confidence, repping it all day. 21 is a respectable number, and we've watched a lot of bench press reps here at the Combine before, but that's the first time I've heard anybody chirp at the guy who was spotting him, and man, that was. How much do you like Dameon Pierce? I mean, we talked about him a little bit yesterday, but the guy just continues to make you want to root for him.
Yeah, I mean, he was running back 3 going in, so he's not going to be a big riser here, but he is going to blow up the Combine, and that's why he was running back 3. It's because he's going to put up reps. He is going to test well in the explosive drills. You just flip on the tape, and I get why you could be low on him. He had, I believe, 100 carries this past year. He wasn't even the true starter for Florida, but every time you flip on the tape, he's breaking tackles. He is tough to bring down. The play where he gets his helmet ripped off last year.
Incredible.
Finishes, ducks his head to go into contact in the end zone. This guy wants it every time he touches the football. So, to me, yeah, I get the concerns over the workload, but that's almost like a positive in his favor. He doesn't have the tread on the tires of other guys. He's going to be, to me, a starting running back once he gets the lead.
Austin, two things there.
Go ahead.
The first one is Mike is highest on Dameon Pierce of any analyst, really, any major draft analyst right now. We did it recently on the Tailgate podcast, looked at where's Mike versus the other people, and Dameon Pierce is one of these guys that has been, Mike, you've been kind of banging the table for, and when talking to so many people here at the Combine, you bring up, what is this process, what's important about this process? The interviews are areas where teams will literally take players off the boards. I'll tell you what, Dameon Pierce ain't losing an interview. This guy is one of the more genuine prospects that's here. Really impressed, and you did a feature article on him in his season, and I came away really impressed with what he did then. He shows up here, he's being really genuine, really authentic. I think running back 3, I think that's firmly where I see him as well.
You guys, him versus Kyren Williams or Tyler Algier, things like that, is that kind of like the same bucket of players, or do you firmly have Dameon Pierce above guys?
It's
like
hard
that?
to put a running back firmly above anyone, right? Like, it does depend on like the
Sure,
type of
that makes
system
sense.
you want to bring him in, and
Yeah.
like the running backs don't matter thing. But like Dameon Pierce is going to do things that Kyren Williams can, and Kyren Williams can do things that Pierce can. It just depends the flavor you need in your backfield, right? Because you're not going to bring Pierce in and have him 300 carries a season. You're not going to bring Kenneth Walker in necessarily and have him do 300, 400. You want a guy that can come in and complement your offense. K-Dub, you know my guy. I think that's the biggest thing. You do not. Everyone talks about this 3-down running back, and we've had this conversation before about Kyren Williams and all that stuff. It's like bring in someone who can do in your offense something different than the backs you have. And like Dameon Pierce has a calling card. K-Dub has a calling card.
To me, there is a clear tier, though, after the top 2 and then running back 3. So after K-Dub, after Breece Hall, and then the DP. DP, Kyren,
and Kai Will,
and TL.
K-Dub.
So you got that. There is like a clear delineation in my mind between the top 2 and then a group of probably 4 or 5 guys in that mix, and that's more where you're pick your flavor sort of guys.
So we're watching the offensive linemen and the running backs test on the field right now, but we've already have some testing in the books with the wide receivers that we saw last night. The 40-yard dash especially sent everybody into a tizzy because we had 12 wide receivers run unofficial 40-yard dash times of 4.39 or faster. Now, the unofficial times, as you guys are going to see him in a second, I mean, they were a little bit different. Tyquan Thornton, he was the top man, 4.28. You look at Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Christian Watson, they're still capping that 4.39 mark. What do you guys think of the overall speed? Obviously, it wasn't as fast as what was initially advertised, but what do we think, Mike?
Well, the thing that didn't get talked about enough was that this was, so prior to this year, every 40 time, unofficial 40 time you saw on TV was done by Charlie Casserly, the former GM of the Titans, I believe, or old school GM, has probably done this over, probably over 100,000 times, clocked to 40. This year is the first year Mark Ross is doing them, and
Mark Ross got a little excited.
Mark Ross ain't got the reps that Charlie Casserly has.
True.
It's like Kings say Kings. Charlie Casserly is a king in the scouting game. So that was an underreported thing, and yes, they were a little bit more off than you expected, but I do still think this is a very fast class, but it's also a very light class. A lot of these guys, whether it's Chris Olave, 187 pounds, Garrett Wilson, 183 pounds, Jahan Dotson, 178 pounds, Jameson Williams doesn't run, but he's going to be around 180, 190 pounds when he does play in the NFL. Like, it's a light class, but it is also a fast class. And I just think that's the way the receiver position is trending in the NFL.
We were talking to Nate Tice today, who has been a big proponent of bigger receivers in the NFL. He factors weight and size so much into the guys that you want to draft in the first round, and he's kind of waning off that a bit, right? He's saying, I want to bring in a guy that can separate, and that matters. We talk about Sky Moore, who is not the biggest receiver in this class, but he's shifty and he's fast. Jahan Dotson, very similar. I do think that you have to be impressed with how fast these guys ran. And to start with the Mark Ross stuff, when you are doing the unofficial times, you have to err on the side of being late rather than early, because Chris Olave ran a 4.26 unofficial and made the decision to not run again, because time is literally absurd.
Right, correct.
He knew it was going to be a 4.39. He probably makes the decision to give it a second swing and maybe gets a faster time in that. So I do think that moving forward, hopefully the NFL errs on the side of, hey, you might as well be 10 seconds late, or not 10 seconds late, but a tenth of a second late than a tenth of a second early, because you could make some decisions. You could have some receivers making decisions they would regret.
Can I say something that I'm guilty of it myself? But I hate the phrase "not the biggest" because literally everyone but one player in this class is not the biggest.
Yeah.
So Drake London is not the biggest wide receiver.
You're not the biggest fan of that phrase.
I'm not the biggest, and so there's probably 30
That's good.
of the wide
That was
receivers
very
here.
good.
35 of them are not the biggest. One is the biggest. I can't remember who that was. Probably.
I'll
Trevor.
never say it again.
So we'll see. We'll take a look at the vertical numbers from the wide receivers now as we kind of continue this conversation. Had 2 guys hit the 40s. Alec Pierce was at the very top. We had Calvin Austin show a really great vertical jump as well. Definitely not the biggest. There's
Actually,
no doubt about
was the smallest.
Was he actually the
I
smallest?
think he was. 170 was. I think.
Okay, all right, so he was actually the smallest. All right, I do want to talk about guys who weren't the biggest. George Pickens is one of them.
Yeah.
Traylon Burks is another one.
They're big. But
Taylor might have been the biggest.
Is he the biggest?
225 was someone bigger than that?
I guess I meant height.
Okay. Not
But
the tallest.
maybe he is
He's not
maybe
the
he is the biggest with 225. So speaking of the biggest receiver,
Yeah.
actually, what did you guys think of Burks' combine performance? Because look, it felt like it wasn't even that bad, but the expectations were just
the expectations were
crazy for
absurd.
Treylon
We went
Burks.
into this thinking he was going to be superhuman. He was
Right.
getting DK Metcalf comps from you. People thought he could be that type of player. Like, honhonestly, like they,
Well, I said-
and
my
you-
fault,
and you-
from you.
So that could mean anything. It could
Yeah,
literally
no,
mean anyone.
that's true. But
Could be
anyway,
me.
anyway, he's getting DK Metcalf comps. The Bruce Feldman's freestyle says he's got 11-inch hands. They come under 10. People are saying he's going to be this uber explosive guy, low 4.4s type at 225. He runs 4.55, and none of it's a death knell. But I do think it goes back to when I was watching Treylon Burks. I've not been as high on him as others are. Some people view the Arkansas receiver as the top receiver in this class. I didn't see that level of explosiveness on his tape. I didn't see like low
Right.
4.4s at 225 on his tape.
Right.
Now, that's not to say he's a bad player. Like, people don't write people off for not meeting your expectations, but I do think it gives you an opportunity to go back and like look at the comparisons that you made. Now people are making more comps to Demaryius Thomas. I think Demaryius Thomas starts to make maybe a bit more sense with Treylon Burks than DK Metcalf, AJ Brown. Like, those are outliers, and I don't think Treylon Burks, for a second, in my opinion, looks like any of those guys.
Demaryius Thomas ran a 4.4 though. This is the other thing. Like that, it is worrisome to me because you're talking about in terms of valuation of a guy. Because I think he was hyped up, and the people who have him like wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in this class is because you're expecting that caliber of athlete. Like for wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, you're not expecting an average athlete. Even like weight adjusting, yeah, it's impressive for a 225-pounder, but weight adjusting doesn't get you open against a cornerback.
Exactly.
You know, like you still have to
right.
run past.
You're still
the cornerback.
225, and you
Exactly.
still run a
Like,
4.55.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The
like-
corner's not going to say like, oh, but weight adjusted. I'll let you go by a little
exactly
bit.
like that. So that is something that it's going to struggle to stack wide receiver, and especially like when you look at his profile and what he did at Arkansas, he was not going one-on-one against defensive backs a lot. And so when a guy is like getting scheme targets, getting scheme touches, and that's where he's producing, and a lot of after the catch stuff, it's like you better be an explosive athlete to win after the catch consistently at the NFL level. Average athletes rarely win after the catch consistently at the NFL level. So to me, when you think about his usage and then projection, you were banking on, if you're drafting him top 15, banking on elite athletic ability.
Yeah.
Now he's not. Now to me,
Right.
that is not a top 15, top 20 guy. And he never was on the PFF
And I
board.
think
He
it's
was like 27th,
shocking.
but-
It's shocking based on expectation, but it was expectation built by what you're hearing about Treylon Burks. I don't think it was shocking.
It's like
based on,
he set the expectations
Exactly, he
by
set his
saying,
expectations and fell under that. I
need
don't think the
4
film was like screaming he was a 4.3s guy. That's my opinion.
What about some overall standouts? Let's look at PFF standouts at the wide receiver position. Just now that the wide receiver group is done and we talk so much about this, my guy, I'll start out with Christian Watson. I think that he was absolutely fantastic. The wide receiver from North Dakota State showed up at 6'4". That's in the 90th percentile for wide receivers. Had a massive broad jump of 11 foot 4 inches, which is crazy. 7th furthest jump that we've seen at the combine for wide receivers since 1999, matched it with a vertical jump, had a 4.36 40-yard dash, was not expecting that. He was a big-time standout for me, but what about you guys? What do you think?
Yeah,
I mean, he
Watson's
tested
probably-
as Treylon Burks probably wanted to test.
Yeah,
I
right,
mean, that's what
you're
people
right,
expect
you're right,
for sure.
You're right.
He's probably had the best pre-draft process of anyone. I mean, maybe Malik Willis but I think Malik Willis, he didn't have to do any of this stuff for everyone to know he has a cannon. But like Christian Watson was kind of in an offense where it's run heavy, North Dakota State, level competition's weak, goes to Senior Bowl, goes here, crushes both about as good as you can possibly do. So he has been flying up boards. The guy that really stood out to me that I didn't expect, I mean, I've watched all his games. Kevin Austin Jr., Notre Dame, wide receiver. 888 yards this past year, had injury issues throughout his career, had only 6 catches prior to this year, and even on tape this past year as a guy who, from week 1 to the last week of the season, was even a different player and like finished very strong for Notre Dame. So this is an ascending prospect that is going to have a lot of people going back and watch the tape because he goes 4.43 in the 40. You know, a 39-inch vertical, 11-foot broad jump. The fastest 3-cone of any guy here, and he is 200 pounds. He is 6'2", 200 pounds. So he's a guy that definitely made himself some money. Maybe I didn't foresee this coming. Maybe it's because I was drunk when I watched most Notre Dame games, but he never stood out to me like that on tape.
What about you? Who's the standout of the wide receiver?
I wasn't that drunk watching Notre Dame games, but I do think a standout is Alec Pierce, and he's another
like
guy.
this.
Alec
You were
Pierce
definitely
said,
drunk watching this.
Cincinnati receiver Alec Pierce had this expectation he was going to come in and blow up the combine, and he did. I keep bringing that up with like Treylon Burks, he just didn't. Like he didn't. Like Pierce goes one of the highest broad jumps we have here, highest vertical jumps we have here. Still runs in the low 4.4s. Is one of the bigger body receivers, not the biggest, but I do think that Alec Pierce has elevated his stock to a point where if you want this type of receiver in your offense, the vertical route tree, etc., you can get it. And like when you think about, you're hearing things like Marquez Valdez-Scantling's going to be coveted on the free agency market. It's like bringing in an Alec Pierce on day 2. You can go get a similar type of receiver, a guy that can play that role and has obviously not upside necessarily, but a lot cheaper, right? A guy on a rookie contract. So I do think that there are teams who are looking for a vertical threat to run a limited route tree in the NFL, not be this guy that's creating separation on this whole host of routes. I think Alec Pierce could be a guy that a lot of teams will covet.
Let's get into a little bit of quarterback small talk. We've talked a lot about quarterbacks so far, but their week is done, if you will. We saw them run the 40. Desmond Ridder had the fastest 40-yard time, right around 4.5. Kenny Pickett got 4.73. Malik Willis did not run, but did anything that the quarterbacks do, whether it was throwing on the field or some of the athletic tests, did they move themselves at all?
I think Desmond Ridder definitely helped himself.
Oh, for sure.
And basically tick that box saying, I can be a rushing threat, and a serious one at the next level. 4.52 is moving at the quarterback position. And now he's not a tackle breaker. To me, as like a runner, he's in that Marcus Mariota, Colin Kaepernick sort of mold.
Isn't that Tannehill
where
too,
where they
right?
want to
Tannehill's
want to
similar.
get down when a guy's coming at them. They're not going to try to break a tackle. They're not going to try to run through contact, but they are going to make you respect the quarterback option. And that's the biggest thing, and that adds so much value to your running game. An option run versus a non-option run in the NFL is a yard per carry difference on average. That is massive. That takes your running game from basically a non-factor, which most running games are in the NFL, to a legitimate factor. So that is going to be big for whatever offense he goes to. And they threw 59 miles per hour. He had the second fastest time, tied with Sam Howell, behind Malik Willis. And I don't think his arm was never a concern on tape, but he really varies his speed, and you never see him really uncork it. And so 59 miles per hour, having, like I said, the second fastest speed there of any quarterback throwing the ball this week was taking that box wholesale.
I'm with you on Ridder. I do think that Desmond helped himself a ton and checking boxes that like he didn't need to check for him to be this like first round top 50 type of player. But now that he has, I do think it's going to make it that much easier to buy into him because he has, of all the quarterbacks here, probably not been billed as this high ceiling upside guy. They're like, oh, you're getting what you're getting and all that stuff. But like now what you're getting is a super explosive relative to the position guy that can come in and do that power option stuff like you said. I think that's going to be really exciting for him. I do still love this fit to New Orleans at 18. That's the pick where I start to feel really confident that like getting a Desmond Ridder in that offense team that has a roster that can win now with a quarterback that isn't ready, isn't like a complete project yet, but I do think he's ready enough to start to compete. I think that's where I start to feel comfortable taking him off the board.
Other than let's get into some of our favorite quotes that we saw today. And other than "Don't touch that bitch," there were a couple of really great
Who said that?
quotes.
I say that all the
Damian
time,
Pierce.
too.
Yeah, actually, Mike probably said it at some point too. One of us. No, but there were some really great quotes that we saw at the combine. One of the podiums that really impressed me the most was Kayvon Thibodeau. And there were a lot of questions about exactly that coming into this, right? Because we saw him as a consensus number 1 overall player, and then he did an interview with sunglasses on, and everybody was like, kind of like,
Same.
let's knock him down a little bit. I mean, yeah, who hasn't here? You probably would have. If we have a show tomorrow, you probably would have. But, one of the questions, or one of the answers that I thought he was really great with was when he talked about his pass rush plan, and we talk about that a lot here on this table. The pass rush plan that you have to have when you're a pass rusher, and just Kayvon just answered this so well. You guys listen to it. We'll react after that.
Chess is life and chess is football, right? When you talk about doing your first move, your first move is going to set up your second move, right? Then you got to think your third move ahead, right? So when you talk about pass rush, I'm going to hit you with speed first. I always hit you with speed, and then that's going to set up my power moves, and then my power moves is going to set up my counter. So if you go watch the games, if you watch UCLA, you see me with the flash dip. That came because I was hitting him with speed, and then I was hitting him with the long arm, right? So I wouldn't have been able to do the flash dip if I didn't hit him with the long arm, right? And then you watch, Washington State, right? If I wasn't hitting him with speed, I wouldn't be able to hit him with the long arm, which then came the long arm counter, right? So just being able to kind of dictate and know, right? It's a heavyweight match, right? It's like a boxer. You've been giving them the jab. You want to come with a hook. You want to change it up. So just having that longevity and realizing that when the fourth quarter comes, you got to put it all together.
So impressed with Kayvon Thibodeau. Obviously, that was one of many answers that he gave that I just love the way he handled himself during that press conference. So from the clips and being at the presser, what did you guys think of Kayvon Thibodeau?
I've been super impressed because I do think that it's gotten to a point we've talked about the Kayvon Thibodeau interviews that no one has seen with NFL teams and the sunglasses thing in the media to where everyone's saying, oh yeah, he is kind of, someone I'm not buying into from a personality perspective. And I'm kind of turning heel there. I think it's what Kayvon Thibodeau is wildly confident in himself. And I think that can sometimes come off as arrogance when it's played in a certain way. And like there are times where it can feel that way. But I don't don't necessarily think it's to a point where it's ingenuine, and that's the thing. When it's confidence to a point where it's not authentic, I do struggle with that. I mean, and again, I struggle with that. Who cares? I'm not making decisions, but I could see teams struggling with that.
Mm-hmm.
Teams won't struggle if they buy into this idea that this maybe sometimes irrational confidence is authentic. Because even if it's not real, it is their reality.
I will say I was a little worried that he's to watch pass rushes, he was going to YouTube. He was saying, I watched YouTube clips of Von Miller.
I hear that from all the players, though. Brian Burns said that. A lot of people have said that.
Get him a PFF Ultimate.
Right.
He needs Ultimate.
Yeah,
okay,
he does. He needs an Ultimate. No, I agree with you completely. He did not come off arrogant at all whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that interview today, he really came off as just some guy who's extremely confident in himself, but it never came off as arrogant. It really didn't. And I think that
I mean, Jermaine Johnson of Florida State gets highlighted today as I think I'm the best edge rusher in this class. And It's like the most used quote on social media. Kayvon Thibodeau says that. It's like, yeah, he's a piece. I don't understand. I do think that he's gotten some slight, that kind of unnecessarily, in my opinion.
So the day started with Jordan Davis at the podium, and there was a lot of questions for Jordan Davis. One of the questions that he answered was, hey, are you more than just a run stuffer? And he had the answer to that question here.
In the pass rush department.
Definitely. Everybody knows, I'm a run stopper, and pass rush kind of goes by the wayside with me. But definitely in the off season, that's something I've been working on. I called on, a few people. I have working out with Chuck Smith, who's known as Dr. Pass Rush. So that's just one of those people. I feel myself when I have a disadvantage, I want to make sure that I kind of even the odds and bringing that up to the same level. It's just all working about improvement. This is what it's all about. In the off season, we want to improve and get better. And I definitely think that.
Dr. Rush is a fantastic nickname. If I was a pass rush teacher,
I think he changed his
I
name.
hope he wears the white coat while he's going
yeah,
through
you
drills
have
and
to.
sunglasses. Yeah.
He's going over his profile. Yeah, you need to work your bull.
He's got the stethoscope just over his over his shoulders for no reason. So obviously, he talks about he's working on his pass rush profile. Something else that stuck out from his podium session is he said that his playing weight was right around 350 pounds. He said the most that he ever played at was 360. And right now he said he's in the 330s, and that's what he would like to operate at. 330s Jordan Davis, a pretty light Jordan Davis. So what do we think about that weight, Mike?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that no nose tackle in the NFL needs to be over 330. You're getting diminishing returns at that point. So that's a very good weight for him. Can't wait to see how he tests here, because watching him move at that size is kind of unbelievable. And if he was playing in the 350s, 360s, even more so. So he should test off the charts for a guy that big. And I love that he brought up as a guy he models the game after, John Henderson. Because you go back to the PFF draft guide, these shades of the comp for him in the draft guide was John Henderson, because they are just, you don't see a lot of DTs 6'6".
Maybe he's got a
that
premium
big,
sub.
that long arms.
Oh, I like that. Maybe he does have.
Maybe he's got a premium sub.
Probably a draft guide.
Maybe he's
reader.
watching on. Hopefully he's not watching on YouTube though.
I do think the projection for Jordan Davis gets interesting, because losing that much weight, like if he was playing the 350, 360s, we haven't seen any Jordan Davis like that, right? And it's kind of similar like Joe Tryon of Washington, who I remember talking to him. He opted out of the 2020 season, and he's a guy like, I've dropped 40 pounds, I'm completely reshaped my body. And I'm not saying Jordan Davis has made
dropped 40 pounds.
Or whatever it was, dropped 20 pounds. Maybe it wasn't 40.
Maybe it was
he said he
4.
completely changed his diet, completely changed his body. And it's like, no one's seen me play like this. He's like, I'm excited to see me play like this, because I haven't taken the field since. And I'm not saying Jordan Davis has made that much of a transition, but I'm excited to see, like, hey, if he was playing in 350, 360s, he's a different dude at 30 pounds lighter. So I do think that's interesting. It's a nice weight. I'm excited to project him forward with that weight.
Does this mean anything for the stamina and snap count concerns that a lot of people are talking about with Jordan Davis? Do you guys think so?
I want to talk more to Georgia coaches, because the counter to that is consistently they had a ton of defensive linemen. They had to get their best guys on the field.
Right.
And it was not so much, it was like, hey, on third downs, who you want on the defense, the best pass rushers, and that was Jalen Carter, and they had also Devontae White. It was not so much maybe that he was out of shape or like that couldn't last that much long in the field, as much as it was, hey, we have better pass rushers on our team, and we're going to put those guys in on third down.
Well, yeah, they're going to have 3 interior defensive linemen, or at least they treated Trayvon Walker kind of like an interior defensive lineman, drafted higher than Jordan Davis.
Yeah,
like Devontae White is probably going to get drafted higher than Jordan Davis. Trayvon Walker's going to get drafted higher, and Jalen Carter next year is going to get drafted higher. So
True.
like, when you're saying who's on the field on third downs, well, there were 3 guys maybe better than him. So, I don't think it's a death knell in that he can never do it, but he was pretty comfortably raw in that regard. Like, he knows where his bread is buttered, and it was run defense.
There are games too, like the Alabama game where he comes in, Alabama kind of gets into a no huddle. It's like you can kind of tell to make sure he stays on the football field. And they're throwing the ball, they're throwing the ball, and that's the concern. And I was talking to Western Michigan head coach where they were talking about game planning for Aiden Hutchinson, and one of the things that Michigan State did was they did kind of the opposite. When Aiden Hutchinson went off the field, you go into tempo to make sure he can't get back on. Right. It was kind of the opposite with Jordan Davis, which is not, I guess, something you want to see.
Did anyone ask his mile time? Yeah, that could be Jordan Davis.
Mile time?
I would wonder if he's.
What do you think his mile time would be?
Oh, that's a good question. What do you think? Let's ask the chat.
Ask the chat.
What do you think Jordan Davis's mile time would be?
I have no read on that. Maybe like 10?
I'm thinking like 14.
No.
I
would say somewhere in like the 8-minute range.
No, you think Jordan Davis is running an 8-minute mile?
Dude, 8-minute miles is
running
slow.
an 8-minute mile.
What?
It's 9. It's
8:30.
9. I get it. 9:30.
You think Jordan Davis is running a 9:30 mile?
That's what I put the line
There are
at.
people in the chat who would run a 9:30 mile.
I know.
Who weigh like 200 less pounds than he does.
That's what I'm saying. I think he'd run a 9:30 mile.
I'm saying 8:30.
It would be under 10. It would be under 10.
No, it would not.
Yes, it would.
No, it
A
would not.
brisk walk gets you to like 11:30.
I know, exactly.
I don't think it would be under 10.
What's your mile time? Sounds like you're running some slow ass shit.
Yeah, no, I think I would beat Jordan Davis in a mile. Is that enough? So okay, we got to hear from the chat. And you brought up Aiden Hutchinson. That's the last quote that we want to get to because we joked about some of these prospects having PFF connections. Aiden Hutchinson does. We're working on a great podcast series with him called the Hutch Podcast, and we actually asked him a little bit about it when he was at the podium.
This podcast is about myself and my journeys kind of through Michigan and now leading up to the draft.
What is the story you want to tell?
You're going to have to watch to find out.
You guys are heavily involved in this podcast. Is going to come up. I'm super excited about it. Aiden obviously seems super excited about it as well. Talk to the people about it. Give us a little hype over this podcast because I think it's going to be great.
This project is going to be absolutely phenomenal. I'm having a ton of fun working with the Aiden Hutchinson family. I'm sitting down with Aiden over the course of a couple days after the combine to talk through some of this stuff. But I spent an hour and a half with his dad. I spent an hour with his mom. I talked to his sister, and you talk to these coaches and the consistency. Everyone I talked to David Ajabo, I talked to Don Brown, a former defense coordinator, I talked to his mom, I talked to his sister, I talked to his high school coach. Every single person says the same thing about him, and it's just this leader, it's this guy who works hard, and I do think when you have that layer of consistency on a player, you buy into this floor that a lot of people are talking about. You're talking about a floor for Aiden Hutchinson that's just unreal. He's going to come in and change the locker room, change the culture. You talk to different media analysts. There's boom or bust guys, right? There's no bust here. He's going to be good.
Right.
That's what a lot of people are buying into.
Let me just say this. I'm not actually involved in the Hutch project whatsoever. The draft board, he was number one prior to that. And just to say about Aiden Hutchinson, he's going to be the number one overall pick. Mm-hmm. I firmly believe that is where Jacksonville Jaguars should go with the number one overall pick because they have to get a win. They have had so many bad drafts in recent years. They have to get a guy who is going to impact the game of football. Aiden Hutchinson is your best bet in this draft class, bar none. Any draft analyst, he's either 1 or 2 on their draft board. Everyone agrees this guy is going to be a damn good football player. Is he going to be J.J. Watt? Probably not. Is he going to be Von Miller? Probably not either. But this guy is going to impact the game. And pairing him with Josh Allen, you have a good pass rush then. You draft a tackle number one overall, that guy's going to be thrown to the fire, and he is going to be called the number one overall tackle the rest of his career. He better be damn good. And if it's someone like Ike Ekwonu, with what we saw from him in pass protection this past year, even Evan Neal at times, they may not be NFL ready, and they may take their lumps right out the gate. And it might not actually be an upgrade for Trevor Lawrence and what they have in pass protection. So to me, if I want what's best for Trevor Lawrence in his sort of development, I go sign offensive tackles, and I draft Aiden Hutchinson.
And that's another thing, too, right? I feel really confident. I don't think this gets talked about a ton when you're talking about top 5 players, but it's do you have the confidence that they can handle that pressure and that expectation? And oh my gosh, Aiden Hutchinson can handle that with ease. He treats every day the same. I do think that they're going to buy into that. I know he's not the betting favorite right now, but I do think I'm with Renner. I do think he's ultimately the number one overall pick.
All right, can we get the results? Did we throw up a poll on Jordan Davis's mile time? Do we think, what is it? What does the chat think? We didn't get anything?
Stone.
A lot of DNFs? People think it is DNFs?
Wow.
Oh,
there's no this chat.
I think he's running over 10 minutes.
I say under 10.
Yeah, I'm under 10.
I'm under 10.
You guys got a lot of faith. Maybe I need to have a little bit more faith, but maybe the new and improved Jordan Davis, the 335 Jordan Davis, could surprise me a little bit here. Thank you guys so much for watching all the content and the coverage that we have had at the Combine. We've had a lot of fun doing it. Obviously, we've got a lot of drills and a lot of things that we still got to get to before the week is over. You can see all that stuff by following us on Twitter, everything over on PFF.com as well. For Trevor Sikkema, for Austin Gayle, for Mike Renner, we're signing off here in Indianapolis. We'll see you guys next time.